7 decades ago, the first television adaptation of Superman arrived. Now, it's time to rocket back to the 1952 to 1958 series Adventures of Superman, starring George Reeves. In this rewatch podcast, my guests and I break down each episode, from its black and white crime drama beginnings to the kid-friendly color seasons, as we celebrate one of the most underrated Man of Steel depictions of all time. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 1, Episode 20, The Riddle of the Chinese Jade, is the host of the KRYPTON Report podcast, returning guest Tyler Patrick. Welcome back.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited to be back to talking about this show on, as of this recording, Happy Superman Day.
Yes, Happy Superman Day. Although, as you and I were saying off mic, for us, it's always Superman Day. But it's nice that there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm on this particular day that we're recording. Obviously, people will be hearing this a little bit later. But yes, Happy Superman Day.
It's like there's people who celebrate Christmas year round, which is cool. Or working out all year round Christmas store. It's like Superman Day every day here at this house, but we like to share it with the world on this particular day. So
very true. So I'm happy to have you back. We are here doing, like I said before, Season 1, Episode 20, The Riddle of the Chinese Jade, aired January 30th, 1953, written by Ben Peter Freeman, directed by Tommy Carr. Our brief synopsis: the manager of an antique store plots an inside job with a thief to steal a valuable Chinese jade statue, but later has second thoughts, while Clark must race to find the missing statue and the shop owner's niece. Now, obviously, you've been on the show before. You were on for episode 2. We did the Haunted Lighthouse, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
So in that episode, we talked about your history with Adventures of Superman, and we went through all of that. Before we dive into this episode, I am curious, not to put you on the spot, but since you were here for our second episode, have you been doing any rewatching along with us as we've been making our way through Season 1?
I have. I'm a little behind. What has helped is we got my best bud Brian gave us his old Xbox One, and I put it in the bedroom, so I have a DVD player in the bedroom, because that's helped, because trying to find time to watch on the DVD player in the main TV room and not be disturbed is ridiculously hard. Had this show be streaming, we love you, DC Universe, rest in peace, I could pop it in on my phone, like when I was at work on break or whatever, but it's been a little bit more difficult because I have to go to my physical media and put it in and everything. But I am following along because, like I told you before, I was going to just start watching it. But when you announced this podcast, I was like, I'll just kind of slow it down. And that's how I ended up going through 2 seasons of Superboy, because I was like, well, not watching Adventures of Superman, I'm going to watch something. And then watched, 2 seasons of Superboy last summer and then slowed it down. I'm enjoying it because it's like that feeling almost of like being in the moment, reviewing the show and having people talking about it as well. So it's like you announce, we kind of follow along what the next episode will be. So we watch it. And I usually try to watch it before I listen to the podcast. That way I have my thoughts and I'm kind of listening to you and your guests. And I'm like, oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or I'm like, whatever I'm thinking. And it's just kind of fun because it's, the closest we'll get to actually kind of living the moment of the series.
Yeah, that's the thing. I know there are some people who are hopefully listening to the podcast or watching. One thing I've noticed is, because I put all of my podcasts out in audio form on all of the major platforms, but also in video form on YouTube. And I noticed that the Adventures of Superman episodes that I do on YouTube tend to get a good deal more traction. We're not talking thousands of views, but it's a noticeable difference. So it seems like our audience for this show seems to like watching us, which is great. So shout out to our YouTube audience, and of course to our audio only listeners as well. We appreciate everybody.
Maybe it's the black and white filter. It's like taking them back.
Maybe. But no, I love that you've been following along. And yeah, to your point, I know there are people who are listening or watching who did grow up watching it, whether it was in first run or initially in syndication, which again is not the experience that you and I had and some of our other guests have had coming to it. more recently in recent years and recent decades. But yeah, to whatever extent that we can kind of create that feel, right, as we're going through it together now and looking forward to the next episode and talking about it. I love that. That's great.
I know I sent you the thing. I don't know if you mentioned it. Like I said, I'm a few episodes behind, but my mom had pointed out that if you have cable, if you're one of those people, Hero TV or the Heroes channel or whatever on Sundays does a block of the Adventures of Superman and like Wonder Woman 77 for people who just a way to watch it like that. So
Thank you. I think
is
we
it?
did mention that at some point on the show. The other thing that I was going to mention, I'm a little mixed on this because technically it is piracy, but archive.org has all of the episodes, or at least all of the season one episodes. I haven't looked beyond season one.
Mm,
This is a little bit of a nebulous area. I recently came across an article. There was some lawsuit involving archive.org. They were arguing fair use, that they're, again, just trying to preserve. It wasn't about Adventures of Superman, but I think it might have been a lawsuit over books that were on there or something like that. I do not have all the details clearly, but in any
interesting.
event, this is a little bit of a gray area, I suppose. But look, it's out there. It's a fact. So I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm merely sharing the information that yeah, archive.org does have them. So that's another way if people want to want to watch, to follow along. They're there too. For now, at
I guess
least, we'll see what happens.
it's one of those points that argue like people want it. You had it streaming, you took it away, and what are they supposed to do? Like I don't know. I'm just saying. Like this. What's interesting is in black and white. Like this would have been shot on film, so a higher resolution, you know, restoration could be done to this series. You know, because you have to listen to people talk about like in TV, like they shot on tape. It's very difficult to make tape high definition. That's why you don't have a lot of Blu-ray releases. And it was a big deal when they did the Lois and Clark high definition upgrade on HBO Max, which rest in peace, um, because it was all shot on tape other than the pilot. So it just kind of sitting here thinking or talking about this, like it could possibly be done for this series, and it would be nice to see things a little cleaned up. Like when I was watching earlier, had to turn the audio up so loud. And there's certain parts my daughter's like, is there sound? And I'm like, yes, it's just, it's old and the quality's not that great. So some parts are just silent.
I was hoping, and we're deep enough into the year now that I kind of doubt it's going to be the case, but we're in the 85th anniversary year of Superman. And of course, not too long ago, we had the new 4K release of the Christopher Reeve movies, the Blu-ray restoration of the Fleischer theatrical shorts. And I thought maybe, maybe we'd get a new release of Adventures of Superman, even if it was simply a matter of reissuing those old DVDs, if not restoring them to any degree and maybe putting them out on Blu-ray or something like that. I was hoping for that. I thought if there were ever a time,
Mm-hmm.
it might be in this milestone anniversary year. But as of now, it doesn't seem to be the case. I guess you never know, but I wouldn't hold my breath over that one.
I would, my hope, okay, here we go. Maybe in 2 years when Superman Legacy comes out, because like going back to like you and I talked before, when Superman Returns came out, they did that huge push where they put everything out on DVD. Um, I walked into Walmart and there was Lois and Clark on DVD, The Adventures of Superman on DVD, Superboy, which finally I was like, it existed, I knew it. The animated series, the old Chris films. So I'm hoping that maybe when that comes back around, there'll be this big push of here's the character and it's all of its history, and it would be nice. Um,
Yes, and
I'm
I
glad I
think
own what I own, but it would be nice to have a cleaner copy.
for sure, no, absolutely. I just look so selfishly. I'm like, hey, maybe we get some more downloads, we get some more views. People can
I
follow
mean,
along more easily.
our friend Zach Moore, it shows that streaming helps, because I remember listening and talking with him because I came on in the first season and we chatted, and at the time Smallville wasn't on Hulu, but when Smallville hit Hulu, his podcast grew because people could go back more easily and check it out than different generation. than having all the physical media. So having that ability to stream the series would help the podcast.
Yeah. Well, I am with you. I think if not this anniversary year, then I think the year that the new Superman movie comes out, because virtually every single person I've had on the show who's kind of in our age group found the show, or at least really delved into the show when those DVDs came out around the time of Superman Returns. So I agree, that was pivotal in terms of getting a lot of this stuff put out there. So we'll see what happens come 2025 and the James Gunn era of the DC movie universe. But for now, we're here happily in the realm of the 1950s, George Reeves' black and white season 1 Adventures of Superman. Let's just talk overall impressions of this before I give my take. What was your take overall? I mean, we'll go scene by scene and all that, but just big picture, what was your take on this episode?
Well, one, it was, I would say, I watched it one time. I wanted to watch it twice, just for like one time taking notes and then one time just watching it. But it felt culturally appropriate for the 1950s. I didn't feel like there was any stereotype racism that's very easy of that time to um, put on Asian people. You know, I didn't catch anything. I may have missed something. If I did, I apologize. But I didn't get any sense of anything. Um, I didn't feel like there was any like indulging in like the accent or like really fake, portrayal. So I found that for a show that was like the air date was 1:30:53. So I found that kind of refreshing. Um, I did like the fact that the opening scene goes on for quite a little while before Clark shows up, and it goes on even farther before Superman shows up. And in all reality, Superman not in it that much. Um, but I did find it interesting how the not try to skip ahead too much, but like how it was resolved at the end with the one character. And I did really appreciate the final scene. I thought it was kind of funny, but I enjoyed it. Um, yeah, I mean, I just all around, I thought it was yeah, I didn't know what the riddle was, but I was expecting a little bit more mystery because it was like the riddle. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that the title maybe could have been tweaked a little bit, but no, I'm with you. I really enjoyed this episode. I remember this favorably enough, but I guess it didn't make that strong of an impression. So when I popped it in to rewatch it, I was just kind of, all right, we'll see how this goes. And I really enjoyed it. And I agree with you that this was, I think, an appropriate, respectful depiction of Asian people. Now, a few episodes ago, we covered Drums of Death, and that went in a little bit of a different direction. We had a couple of YouTube comments who weren't pleased that we acknowledged maybe some of the dated aspects of that episode. The thing that I said then, and I've said in other episodes, and I'll always say, is that, again, it's not about condemning or condoning. We just acknowledge and we recognize the context, and that's it. And I,
I mean, we
I feel we've been fair. That's my own take. If people feel differently, so be it. I always appreciate people engaging, I suppose.
television more so I think than movies is an interesting way of capturing, and I'll say this a lot with sitcoms, a time period, because it lets you know what people thought was funny, how people reacted. And it's why it's so difficult for like this generation to go back and watch 90s sitcoms because they're so current culture inappropriate. Just like for us, going back and watch like 80s and 70s sitcoms, we don't really get. It's not really funny to us. And I feel like comedy a lot of times is generational, because it's a snapshot of the culture and the time. So with that same mindset, like I'm not agreeing with something, but I understand it happened. This is where people were. This was the how things were looked at. Um, we ran into some of that when we did some of the Fleischer cartoons when the other studio took over.
Sure. Yeah, we just
There were
covered
some
that
things.
on Digging for Kryptonite. I don't know.
So
People may or may not have heard that. I have to double check my spreadsheet as far as when these things are airing. But yeah, we had just had a conversation about this. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I don't think it's aired yet. I
It
don't
hasn't aired
think.
yet. Yeah, no, no, no.
Okay. So that's something you kind of like. Okay, like I acknowledge. And it's the same thing in the comic books. Like you go back certain comic books, and the way things are done, you're like, yee, But you just got to kind of move on. Like we can't really change it, but we can do better now. So
Yeah. And that's the thing. And again, I stand by anything that I've said on any of these episodes because again, it really is just about just recognizing and having a discussion, but not in a way where I feel, unfairly taking it to task. We recognize it was a different time. But all that being said, this was an instance where I feel, and look, just from a personal perspective, my wife is Chinese, our son is half Chinese, so I was particularly dialed in as I was watching this, and I'm curious. And just like when we get to Tony, the Italian diner owner, next season, and a very over the top depiction. But here, I agree with you. We didn't have over the top accents or stereotypes or caricatures. I felt like it was a very appropriate, respectful, like refreshingly so
yeah, yeah.
depiction of this ethnic group. So kudos to them, especially for the time.
I mean, one show that I used to watch on Nick at Night, that I became a huge fan of, was The Monkees. And I remember there's an episode where the monkeys go into a Chinese restaurant, and um, it was very much caricaturized. Is that even a word? Yeah, I'll make it whatever. Um, Depiction. So when I started this episode, I kind of had in the back of my mind, I was kind of prepared for certain things, and it didn't happen. So it was nice.
Yeah, so that was great. I agree with you. We're talking about sort of presences in the episode. So this one, of course, features Clark, as it always does, even though we've had episodes where there's been minimal Clark. But we have Clark, we have Lois, and we do not have any Perry. We do not have any Jim. We do have Inspector Henderson. And to your point, yeah, Superman doesn't pop up until pretty deep into the episode. And I would argue, and I will argue when we get there in our scene by scene breakdown, he's largely unnecessary, except for probably the very, very end. And it was interesting the way things unfolded. It kind of felt like, okay, we got to get Superman in here. But as you're watching it, you're kind of like, I think there was an easier way around, but we'll talk about
Hmm.
that. The thing that I liked most, and it took me a minute to kind of figure out why I was enjoying this so much, and I slept on it, and then I was thinking about the conversation we were going to have, and I'm like, there was something about it that I really liked that I thought worked so well. Like, what was it? With the exception of that opening scene, and you're right, it is a fairly lengthy scene where Harry and Greer are hashing out their plan for the next day. After that scene, everything unfolds essentially in real time, more or less.
Yeah,
And as a
yeah.
big 24 fan, I was there for that because I was thinking about other episodes and I would really have to go back and think more about other instances of this. But I feel like in virtually every episode, there's some passage of time, even if it's just the next day.
Yeah.
But this was an instance where once we get to the day in question, where Lois and Clark and Lusong and Lily are in the apartment and Greer and Harry are across the street ready to throw that bomb, everything really just follows in succession, essentially in real time. And I think that gave the episode a really great taut quality to it. I really, really dug that.
I agree, because it's so easy when you're writing and creating to like cut away later that day, or this afternoon, or the next day, to kind of move the story without having to actually deal with certain details. Like, oh, what are the mechanisms to get from here to here? Just make it the next day and we'll start here. Okay, but to break it down like you just said, really flows nicely. And I didn't think of it like that, but I could tell there was something about it that was like, this feels different in a way. And that's exactly right. There was no, let's go back to the planet, or I got to go here. It literally was the one location. I mean, you're on the street. So it's either in the street, um, the shop, the apartment above the shop, or the basement,
Yeah.
which is all in the same basically building area. So
Yeah, you're right. Not only the timing aspect, but the setting as well. You're right. We didn't cut away to Perry at the Daily Planet on the phone with them or anything like that. I mean, we did to Henderson, but very briefly, and then Henderson comes into the picture, right? So yeah, I think that was one of the aspects of this that I feel really, really made it sing. I was very, very pleased with this episode, and I think too with this one in particular. Again, despite being called the Riddle, there's no great mystery because we, the audience, know everything that's going on. We got that opening scene, right? If you had cut
Mm.
that opening scene out, then we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the connection here? What's the relationship? What's the plan? What's going on? But we know the whole picture. So I think that lets some of the air out of the balloon, like relieve some of the tension because we know what's going on. But I think they make up for that in the pacing of it and in that real time aspect. It was really, again, if you're a 24 fan, if you like Jack Bauer, like this, for whatever reason, like that's what came to mind as I was watching this.
I feel like if you were to just like watch this one episode, it would be maybe a letdown, and you'd be like, oh. But watching it as we are, and then getting this style, I think it is refreshing. It is different. It is a little bit more engaging because it breaks the formula that sometimes some of these shows fall into. Stylistically, it changes. So I think that has a play into how it goes forward.
Totally. So quick guest star breakdown: Victor Sen Young as Harry Wong. He would go on to do 100 episodes, 100 plus episodes of Bonanza, which
Nice.
I've never seen.
Was he Hop Sing?
Yeah.
Was he Hop Sing?
Yes.
Oh, dang, that's cool. Of course I've seen Bonanza. I have a father who thinks he's living in the Wild West. Okay, um, but I've seen some, and the Ponderosa, which was like the prequel spin. I don't remember. My dad watched it. It was one of those shows on in the background.
I'm no stranger to classic TV, but that one somehow has escaped me. But yes, he was on that show. We had Paul Burns as Lu Song. He'll be back in season 2, episode 24, The Star of Fate. So we'll keep an eye out for him when we get there. Gloria Saunders as Lily, the niece, and James Craven as Greer, the thief.
I did not catch his name till like the end.
Yeah.
I don't know if they said it earlier, but like it wasn't until Henderson was talking at the end, he says Greer, that I caught. I just kept writing in my notes, gangster guy, because I didn't know what his name was.
Yeah, I can't remember. I feel like it came a little bit sooner than that, but they definitely didn't say it a ton. They definitely didn't say it a ton.
I missed a little of the audio at the beginning because I had to keep turning it up, and my daughter's asking me questions, and I'm like going and like higher and higher because it was such a low like frequency. So I missed a little of the dialogue at the beginning. So I was like, oh, okay, gangster guy. All right.
Yes. All right. Shall we go scene by scene through the riddle of the Chinese Jade?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. So we open on this exterior shot of Metropolis at night, clearly stock footage, but it really sets the scene for us. And then we go inside this restaurant, I believe, and we'll learn their names later, but Harry and Greer, and they're meeting in this corner. I thought that they did a great job in this scene of making you feel like you were in a larger space. Like clearly that was all they had of the set. But between the music that was playing, ostensibly coming from the jukebox, and the two of them, and kind of they're scanning the room as they're having this discussion and making their plan, I felt like it allowed you to fill in the rest of the room with your imagination. What did you think about? I mean, we'll talk more about what their specific plan was, but just the vibe of the scene and the dynamic between the two of them. What was your take?
Well, one thing I thought about is like what you're saying about the way it was brought out is I, recently took a trip to San Francisco, and the last night I was there, I went to Chinatown for dinner. So like I was in a very hole in the wall, small, more authentic Chinese restaurant, eating. And I always like to have that kind of table against the wall or in the corner, but I was in the middle of the restaurant, which made me feel uncomfortable. But that's kind of the background I filled in with, of like just being kind of clumped into a small area in a restaurant. And it just kind of made me think of like a lot of like mafia gangster type stuff where they're always in a restaurant, making their plans. So that's why I was kind of figuring out, okay, this guy obviously is up to something. So
Yeah, no, right on. So, like you said, this scene does go on for a while, and I think it serves two functions. So, on the one hand, we the audience are getting the information about what the plan is that these two guys have to steal this Chinese jade, but also they're from the beginning scene here planting the seeds that Harry is not all in on this. He has some misgivings, he has some reservations, and that will continue to play out. And I know we focused a minute ago really on the quote unquote real time aspect of the episode, and I do think that's the high point. But also Harry's journey through the episode. We get plenty of episodes where the bad guys are the bad guys, and that's kind of it. But here you had a true bad guy in Greer, but then you had someone
Mm-hmm.
else who had just gotten a little bit turned around, right? And needed to be set straight. And he eventually comes to his senses, and we see where he ends up at the end of the episode, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But the seeds are planted here, right? He doesn't want anyone to get hurt. He has, he just has questions. He wants to make sure everything's going to go smoothly. So I think it was effective in setting that piece of it up as well.
I mean, it brings it in because I don't know if in the beginning they mentioned that he's the manager, or if they mentioned that he is engaged to Lily. Because like I said, I missed a little bit of the dialogue at the beginning. Because when that comes up, I'm like, oh dang, he really was like, when he gives her the whole speech that we'll get to, I was like, oh, okay, I must have missed that setup. So
Him being the manager, if I'm not mistaken, I think that information does come later, but the relationship with Lily, they do talk about in that scene at the restaurant. But the plan that they hatch out here, and they spend a lot of time talking about it, but essentially, there is this underground uh, tunnel between the building where Harry lives and the antique shop and the apartment over the antique shop where the owner Lu Song lives. And we get this diagram showing that we have this
oh,
very
it's a
simple
great
diagram
diagram.
showing that there's this passageway, this staircase, right, going under Harry's building into the secret passageway beneath the street, and then coming up into the building where the antique shop is. And so this is laying out where what they're planning to do, and the fact that although we have this antique shop, the most valuable item, this priceless item, this Chinese jade statue, the owner, Lu Song, doesn't display in the store, but rather keeps locked up in the apartment above the antique shop. But he is going to be taking it out to show to reporters, Lois and Clark, the next day. So that's where the timing aspect of this comes in, right? Where they have to make their move while Lu Song is meeting with Lois and Clark, because that's their opportunity to seize the Chinese jade statue while it's out.
And I find it just hilarious in Kismet, maybe, that the reporter that happens to be coming as Clark Kent, had it be, Jimmy Olsen and Noah and Lois Lane, he might have got away with it. But because it was Clark Kent, nope, didn't get away with it. So just his luck.
Yeah, I know. Very true. And the fact too that in terms of the information that we're learning here, Harry believes, oh, and I guess the reason why Lois and Clark are there at all is because Lu Song is going to be donating this statue to the museum, right? And
Yes,
that kicks
and
in this
he's
whole aspect where, Harry feels it should be passed on to Lily, who he's planning to marry. So that's why, and clearly Greer is egging him on with this, where it's like, hey, like this belongs to her anyway. You're just, you're taking what's yours, that sort of deal.
I. So he says Clark and Lois ask how much it's worth. He says about $500,000. So I looked it up. In today's value, it would be $5,680,995. So
Yeah, we got. I
yeah,
guess there's different sources out there. I looked it up too, and what I found was like over 6 million, but still in that same
I
ballpark.
mean, it was an inflation calculator, so I just um, so yeah, I'm like, okay, giving it to a museum. That seems like something you would do like in your will, like you would hang on to it till you pass or something. But whatever, I mean, it's his. That's what he
Yeah,
chooses to do.
yeah, for sure. But that's really setting up the stakes and the motivations and everything and the tension really in that first opening scene. And I think too, I like that scene was long and slow because once we get to the next scene, everything is going to go a lot. Again, too, it's like it's all relative. I mean,
Yeah,
by today's standards,
fast.
no, it's not like this is an incredibly rapid pace that this episode is moving, but relatively speaking, it was. And so I like the setup here where you're kind of settling in, getting the lay of the land, and then we're going to be off and running.
Yeah, like they're sitting there and he takes it out and they hear the the explosion, and they're like, "What was that?" And I didn't realize at first, like they were above, the shop, and they're like, "Quick, downstairs to the shop." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And they run, like they put it back in the case, and they run downstairs, and everything is just destroyed.
Well,
And
so even before that sequence, one thing that I wanted to mention was, again, once we get to that next day and we're cutting between Lois and Clark and Lusong and Lily in the apartment above the antique shop, talking about this priceless statue that he's going to donate to the museum that's worth $500,000 in 1951 money. And then we have Harry and Greer across the street with this homemade bomb, right?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
The thing that struck me more than anything, that Harry's got one hell of an arm on him. I think he missed his calling. He
yeah. They're
throws this
across the.
bomb.
I mean, it's quite large. And it's not like a perfect like circle or anything. And because there's a person walking who walks up to the storefront, so they have to like go back inside because they couldn't throw it right then. But yeah, like he had to throw it, let it go, run back inside, go down, run across. But he'd probably have to wait for it to explode first before running across. But then it begs the question, like how powerful is it? Would it have erupted, and caused issues of him getting through the trap door? I'm just like, you know,
That's a good,
um,
yeah. I, I hadn't thought about that, but that's true. That is,
because he'd have to come up through the trap door, then go upstairs to the apartment, get it, come back down through the trap door, run across, you know. So, what if something exploded and was on top of the trap door? Plan ruined.
when your entire plan relies on an underground passageway, playing around with bombs above ground is a little dicey. It's a little dicey, but it worked out just great for him. But yeah, man, Harry, what an arm on him. Made it all the way across the street and right through that window. I was very impressed by his athletic ability in throwing that bomb. But yeah, we get this big explosion. There's also a really cute moment before the explosion where Lu Song is like, "I have what I believe you call a scoop of news," and Lois is like,
Yeah.
"News scoop," and a cute little moment there. He talked about wanting to donate the statue because of everything this country had done for him and his people. Which,
That's like the one thing I feel like that's probably the one line. It's like, that's like we're trying to make up for like post World War II. Like,
yeah,
America, like, our bad. We're sorry. That's probably the one line where I'm just like, But then I'm trying to be like, okay, this is Metropolis, not a real place. This is a Superman show, not a real person. It's not really historical, you know. Some things are a little different. And it made me, I wanted to ask you, do you remember in any other Superman comics any kind of like Metropolis having a Chinatown? Like, I feel like I do, but I don't at the same time.
I mean, not offhand.
See, that's how I feel. Like, I feel like maybe there was a reference here or there, but I don't ever really remember there in Metropolis having a Chinatown. So,
I'd have to think about it. I
um,
wonder Lois and Clark, the New Adventures of Superman. I mean, I feel like they must have done something at some
that's
point.
that's how that's the thing is like I have a feeling that there was at some point, but I don't know when or where. So,
Yeah. But yeah, like that line felt like a little bit of a stretch. But in the context of him and his family, right? Like whatever, opportunities he was able to pursue and clearly he built this business for himself, that totally tracked. Sort of extrapolating that and talking about what, the United States has done for the Chinese people generally, maybe we were stretching there a little bit. But in any event, you get where he's coming from. And then again, we have this big explosion and they go down to investigate the wreckage. Clark immediately shifts into the confident, authoritative mode that I love, where he just commands Lois to call Henderson. And wait till we get to Clark and Henderson. Just like
oh
bossing
yeah,
this guy around. It's amazing.
I think it's I okay. So Henderson, it took me a moment, and just as a little surprise for an upcoming episode of Krypton Report, we have a guest coming back that connects to Henderson in a way. I did not realize, like, I kind of put two and two together that Henderson's kind of the same character that would later appear on Black Lightning as Henderson. It's just a like an evolution of the character. Like it's still Detective Henderson. It's just like a different version of Henderson. It just kind of popped in my brain when I was watching this. Like, oh, I didn't get to do my deep dive like I wanted to, but that was just something that was on my mind that I want to go into. So
Nice.
I'm like, okay, because I know that the character of Detective Henderson initiated from the radio station.
Hmm.
So I felt like that was an interesting point. And he is a fun character. And we were talking about my wife and I just recorded an episode for our Flash Week, like we were talking about, um, where we were looking at the Mark Hamill Trickster episodes in a two-parter, like how it was put on VHS. And we were talking about characters and things that were created in shows that later made it to the comics or didn't make it into the comics and stuff. So it's interesting characters that cross mediums. And Henderson, I feel like, came from radio. It's here, but it's not really in the comics right now that I can think of. Because I think it is a neat character, almost like Superman's Commissioner Gordon in a way. His Clark's police liaison, so to speak. Because as a reporter, you think you'd have some sort of like more connection with the police. And I mean, of course, we've gotten Maggie Sawyer and stuff, and Dan Turpin, but I don't think I remember Henderson coming back around. So
Henderson definitely, having reread a lot of those Triangle era comics not too long ago, he is there, but he's not nearly as prominent as Maggie and Dan. They really, I think, usurped that position of the law enforcement liaison, because I think that is a pretty fundamental role for both Clark the reporter, which sadly in the comics oftentimes doesn't get the emphasis that I feel it should, and Superman as well. So, but I think Maggie and Dan kind of took over that. But I like. I mean, there's some really funny stuff with Henderson in this episode. So we haven't gotten to Henderson yet, but at this point, Clark and Lois and Lusong are investigating the wreckage, and while this is happening, Greer and Harry make their move. Right, they've come up, they've gone through. We don't see this, but they go through the tunnel and they come up and they enter Lusong's apartment, and they take the jade statue. But this is where things start to go awry. Lily is there and sees them, and Greer insists that they have to take her too. So now things have gotten a lot more complicated, and the stakes have risen as the two guys take the statue and Lily back out and down into the tunnel.
I just know that if I was creating a crime, I'd wear a mask or, at least like sunglasses and a baseball cap, the Marvel way, something to alter my appearance.
I
So,
mentioned 24, and just a real quick tangent while we're talking about Fox action dramas of that period. I was a huge Prison Break fan. Did you watch?
mm, nope. But my
No.
roommate in college did. And when I worked at Blockbuster, he was like constantly bring me another season home. I was like, all right.
Yeah.
Before streaming.
Yes. Oh no. Believe me, man. I know. I was all in on Prison Break. I mean, spoiler alert. At a certain point in the show, it does live up to its title, and then the characters are on the run, and the main character, his big disguise was just putting on like a sport coat and a hat, like a blazer and a baseball cap, and that was his disguise. But anything would be good. Here's the thing: both of them clearly should have been wearing something, but especially Harry. It's like, bro, if you're going to be committing, there you go. Tyler just popped on his glasses. Wait. Actually, where did Tyler go? All right. Oh, you're back now. Great. but but especially for Harry, you were the one who would be recognized.
Yeah. Like, you'd be the one in the shadows, like, get it, it's over there, because Greer would be like, who is this guy? But Harry, it's like, Harry, what are you doing here? Then you'd have to play like, stop that man, like knock him out. Like, I was just here. like,
Yeah.
like,
I know, man. And so we follow them through this underground passageway, and of course, Harry is clutching the statue, and that will play out a little bit later. We'll get the payoff to that. And Lily faints, and Greer throws her over his shoulder and climbs up the ladder with her on his. Do you think you could climb a ladder with someone flung over your shoulder?
I mean, it's the 50s. Women only weighed probably like 80 pounds, It was before America
I'm
was
not
so big.
saying it's impossible, but
No, I'm just I just, you know, in the situation of where it goes, where he's like, she's seen our face, there's nothing we can do. I figured he just would have like left her and tied her up right there. Because I mean, that's what he basically does is he takes her back down and throws her down there. So it's like he's doing extra work.
Yes. Yeah, you do wonder what is the plan here? Like what does he intend to do with Lily? It's we only get so far as she's seen us. We have to take her. It's like, well, what are you gonna do with her? But again, there's still a lot more to come on that. But I was just very impressed at, and I noticed. We'll talk about this
Maybe
more
he's a
later.
retired fireman. Maybe he used to be a fireman and he just quit because it wasn't paying enough. Crime worked better
Uh,
for him. So.
I know. Well, in a couple of scenes when Harry and Greer have their huge fight, the stunt doubles are very apparent, and I assume that was the stunt double who was carrying her up the ladder as well. I wasn't clocking the switch, but I'm sure that was the case. But in any event, still impressive. So this is one of my favorite scenes where again I feel like this Harry is just a very just a very very capable here. We talked about his arm, and now he comes in, and in fairness, he does arouse Clark's suspicions fairly quickly, but he comes in and he's really he's really playing dumb, right? As he comes in, he's
He
like,
was
"What
taking a
happened? Who could
nap.
have done this?" He was taking a nap, and the explosion woke him up. But he's really putting on this show.
He's like, no one, Lusan has no enemies. No one would do this. Like, you know, and everyone's like, oh, and Clark's like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it's funny because I feel like his instincts as a journalist would be to question and doubt everyone, but then like his instincts as Superman would be to give people the benefit of the doubt. So it's like, um, but this is like, you know, the no nonsense Clark. So he's just like, guilty till proven innocent.
Lois has a great line too, where she's like, "Whoever did this should be drawn and quartered." So
Oh, I know.
Lois is out for blood.
I will say that is one thing that I'm enjoying with this is really getting to the vibe of Phyllis Coates and really appreciating her Lois. You know, because my up until this, my experience with her was very minimal. Um, so getting to go through this season has been great to just experience her Lois Lane, and I've come to really like her Lois Lane.
She's great. Our next episode. And speaking of Zach from Always Hold On to Smallville, he'll be my guest for the Human Bomb, and that's a really fun one. And there's one Lois moment that always makes me laugh, and I'm excited to talk about that. But yeah, man,
Nice.
always Phyllis Coates. We're always in agreement. She was a fantastic Lois. And Harry also has a line that I love here, where I'm gonna look for opportunities to use this in my personal life because it's. I just thought it was so great. Where he's like, "If I searched my mind for a century, it'd do no good." Like I couldn't. I could never think about who could have possibly done this.
uh, Put it on a spin towards your wife. Like if your wife's like, "Am I pretty? If I search my mind for centuries, there'll be no one as beautiful as you." I'll do it after this. I'll go home. I'll go out and talk to Janine and find a way to slip it in. And she'll be like, "That's so sweet and corny." I'll be like, I know, baby." And I'll turn to the fake camera and wink. You know, give him a little wink.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's just it's too far. It's like Harry. It's too far.
Yeah,
Search my mind for a
that's
century.
that's like that kind of line where just like, who talks like this, man? Like that's when like it would tip me off like something's up with this guy. Right then, that's the line that would make me like suspicious because I'm like, you've taken it too far.
Yeah.
So it's like, calm down.
Yes. Well, we're get Clark's antenna are already starting to go up, and they will in this next scene when Lily and the Jade are discovered missing, right? And they're all back in the apartment. And at this point, Clark notices the substance, right? He'll discuss this later with Henderson. Bamboo, right? There
Mm-hmm.
was the bamboo in the box where the statue was being held, and now Harry has it on his shirt. And of course, we had
Clark
seen
was
him clutching it.
smooth.
Yeah, I know. And he
He
walks by, and he just yeah.
he was
he like
smooth because he got it and he like goes to Henderson. And he like whips out like a napkin or like a handkerchief with it in it. And he's like, check this. Take it
yeah
to the lab.
yeah yeah. It was great. I wanted to ask you in this scene after the statue and Lily, Lusong's niece, are discovered missing. Lusong is crying, and Lois is consoling him, but he's holding the box. And I'm curious. What do you think he's more upset over, the statue or his niece?
I think it's the niece, but also in that scene they're twisting it to where they think that Lily was involved.
Yes, that's
And
true.
I think that maybe he's wrestling with like, was she? Because she's not there, you know, and Harry's there, but she's not. So about to kill this cat, by the way. Um, I think that because I feel like he had already planned on parting with it. He wasn't going to get anything. Uh, I'm telling my wife to come get the cat.
It's
I'm about to
okay.
kill it. She's crawling on my stuff, about to knock stuff over. She got trapped in here with me.
Uh-oh.
Um, so that's how I took it, because we watch how he progresses and how he looked at. I felt like, he had already made his peace with, I'm going to part with this statue. He hates that it was stolen because he didn't get to do what he wanted to. Like, he wasn't going to get any value. Like, he wasn't going to get anything out of it other than the feeling of giving it to the people. But the fact that his niece is missing and she may be the one that's responsible, I think that's what's bothering him.
All right,
So,
I like that. I like that interpretation. I go with that.
because he seems like a very close and loving uncle from the scenes we get with him before and then at the end. So, and a very forgiving man.
I think being upset over the prospect that his niece was involved in this, I think that tracks and maybe helps bridge the gap here. And I'm being somewhat facetious when I bring up the question, but it's just that again, what we see is him crying over the empty box. So it just it looks like he's more upset about that.
Yeah,
But no, I like your reading on that, and I think that works.
I think the box is just something for him to have to kind of hold, to kind of represent the loss of something, like if there had been something that maybe we had been introduced to, like literally like a scarf or a hat, and then that was left behind, maybe he would have something like that. But that's just my take. My 2 cents.
No, I hear you. Then we get the Clark Henderson scene. Clark shows him the bamboo and, is trying to impress upon Henderson, hey, there's more going on here. Henderson is looking to wrap this up more quickly. He's like, good grief, Ken. It's like, if I don't have these cases solved, like papers across town, including yours, like rake me over the coals. I liked their banter in this episode. They have an even better exchange in one of the upcoming scenes, but I like, it's just always funny to me how I don't want to say how inept Henderson is. I feel like he's limited in terms of his abilities, but
Hmm.
more so what I'm always kind of tickled by is just how Clark bosses him around.
There was a line that he said to Clark about being like an investigative reporter or something. It was kind of just because, Henderson being the detective, and yet Clark's doing more of like the investigating detective work. And Henderson's like, oh, yep, still that guy. All right, let's wrap it up, boys. Let's go home.
Yeah. Well, I think in an upcoming scene, the scene after this, the next one, where Henderson is like, "Do you want my badge?" Something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. But in any event, Clark is able to convince Henderson to let Harry go, right? And he's like, I'm sure Mr. Wong will be happy to answer your questions later. And so Harry's off, and we follow Harry back to his apartment. So before Harry enters, Lily is still unconscious on the bed, and Greer's growing over. Little creepy there. It's like, what are your intentions? And of course, that's what Harry walks in on, is seeing Greer like sitting on the bed with her. It's again, we don't see any more than that, but yeah, clearly Greer not a good guy,
A
and you
little, a
wonder
little
kind of where this would
menacing.
go.
Yeah, a little menacing.
Yes.
Just enough, I think, to be like, like think about like 50s TV, like risque, and then it
Yeah.
was over.
And this is where that tension, right, between Harry and Greer comes to a head, right? Where Harry just wants to bring the statue back and explain and just get out of this, right? Clearly he's in over his head. He's seen the wreckage of the antique shop. That's the other that's the other thing too, where it's one thing I think you can rationalize, hey, this statue should go to the heir, should go to Lily. Again, that doesn't justify the theft, but hey, we can use this passageway. No one will get hurt. But it's like, I mean, someone could have been hurt in the explosion, but more than that, destroyed Lusong's business.
Yeah. There's no talk about insurance money or insurance fraud or, nothing like that about getting money that way. Could you have just have easily like blown up something out side or like in the alley behind it, just enough to like scare them to come running outside to see what's going on instead of blowing up his actual livelihood.
I know. I feel like it's funny, the spur of the moment, but it does because Lu Song was planning to donate the statue. Like you said earlier, it's not that it doesn't matter, but it's not as something you were going to donate is stolen. It's not as much of a loss as again your business being blown to bits. So I feel like that's the greatest sin that that Harry
And let and
commits in
let's
this.
and let's put a pin in that and hold that thought for when we get to the end.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But so now
Because
we
I,
get
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that needs to come back up.
I agree. No, I think that's a great point. But so now again, we have this everything's come to a head with Greer and Harry and they start fighting and again, it's so clearly the stunt doubles and we've run into this a number of times and look, we're watching things on these big high def televisions and we're pausing and we're rewinding and these are things they didn't have to worry about when it was being made. It's fine. What I do give them credit for, I mean, this fight goes on for a while. It's
Mhm.
we just covered the Evil Three. Actually, the day that you and I are recording this, the episode just came out, and in that episode, similarly, the two guys of the Evil Three had this knockdown, drag out fight at the beginning of the episode, and you're watching it, and it's like, damn, like they really went at it for a while. And similarly here too, it's quite the bout of fisticuffs.
And once again, have we mentioned Superman yet? No, he has not appeared yet.
But you know what? I don't know. I don't know how you feel, but he, I don't want to say he's not needed, but I don't.
Sometimes
He's not.
I don't mind a good Clark Kent story because it's
Yeah.
still the character. You know what I'm saying? It's still the character, and he's still doing stuff. Um, as much as I love seeing the suit and the power, like if the story is good, you buy into the character no matter what. So I don't mind a good Clark Kent story. I don't mind that it's just mainly Kent focused. It's almost like they were like, oh yeah, we need Superman in this episode, so do this because one of my favorite lines is coming up here that involves Superman and Greer here. So
Oh, okay. I think I know. We'll see when we get there. But Greer is able to knock out Harry, and in the midst of all of this, Lily has woken up and grabbed the statue and has tried to make off with it. And Greer stops her and throws her down and hits her. I mean, again, the way it's blocked. We're not really seeing it, but he hits her, and then he's going in to hit her again as we cut away. Again, very very violent, very menacing. Again, season one.
we have to know that we hate Greer, that he is the bad guy.
Yeah.
We have to hate him. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we have to show that he is. Yeah, it's like one of those like you have to show that he's up here as a bad guy, and or wait, he's down here as a bad guy, and Harry's still up here as this ambiguous. Like, I'm not the bad guy. I just did a bad thing, kind of thing. Um, so we have to have that like he's really bad. To kind of balance the crimes that Harry here has done.
No, that's a great point. It's that you say that. That's very true because it is a tough pill to swallow, I think, or a little bit of a stretch when we get to that final scene and Henderson's decision there. But I agree. I think the episode is, uh, again, is showing you how bad Greer is, and then hopefully that makes the ending a little bit, track a little bit more, I suppose. But yeah. So then we're back into the apartment. And again, this bickering between Clark and Henderson continues. And Henderson is fed up and he's like, all right, I'm going to go look for Harry. And Lu Song tells him that, okay, he lives across the street, blah, blah, blah. And this is the bit that I love where as Henderson is walking out, Clark is like, do you mind if I come with you? And Henderson's like, would it make a difference if I did? They go off together.
That's the series that I want. Like, just give me an episode of them two, like, kind of like stuck together, like
Yes.
investigating. And Clark keeps trying to get away to go turn into Superman, and Henderson won't let him. And it's just the two of them bickering and bantering all day.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I would be there for that. As I always say, my knowledge of the color episodes is incomplete because I have not seen all of them. We'll eventually get there, but I wonder if there's anything along those lines in the later seasons because I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to kind of look forward to because I'm right there with you. I honestly can say I don't know if I've ever actually watched a colored episode. I've seen clips and parts of the colored episodes, but I think the few that I had seen before all came from the black and white. Um, so I'm enjoying this journey with you.
Right on. So across the street we have Greer, but more specifically the stunt double carrying Harry down underground and carrying Lily and plopping them down underground and then turning on the water to drown them. And we really, they take their time with the scene as we see him go down with one and then the other. And Clark and Henderson bust in right after Greer has made it down that trapdoor himself. And this is what I was alluding to earlier, where Clark, it seems like Clark hears something first, hears the rushing water, and then we see him use his X-ray vision, right? And he sees
Yeah.
clearly that there's this trapdoor, there's this staircase, and there are these two people being, drowned or about to be. And he tells Henderson, "Oh, I'll be right back," right? And he rushes outside. This is the thing. I feel like here is the point where they felt like, okay, we got to get Superman in the episode. But I'm saying
Yep.
to myself, okay, all I had to do was open the trap door.
It would be very easy. It's not like the trapdoor was hidden to where like Clark couldn't have found it. Being the investigative journalist, like it's not a far stretch that he would find this trapdoor and open it, and then there they are. Because when he goes and transforms, he comes walking down the street so casual, just like do do do, and then like looks down, sees a part, and then starts punching the street. And I just love it because you can see the breakaway square that that's there for him to tear out. Um, and then drops down in it. But yeah, Clark could have just as easily just opened the trap door right there, and him and Henderson could have done it. I almost feel like you said, like they had much like recently in Superman Lois, there was an episode where he never put on the costume, and I was talking with James, and James was like, "I didn't even notice because you're so ingrained in the story." But I feel like we can get away with that now, but you couldn't have got away with it then. We're there to see Superman, not Clark Kent. So like you said, you have like, well, this is the moment, excuse me, that you have to put Clark Kent in. I do apologize. I'm still getting over some, like, my sinuses, like I'm all dried out from our weather changes. And the more I talk, the more I cough. So I apologize.
It's all good, man. Listen, I've said this on various episodes as I've been sick or getting over being sick, especially since our son started preschool this past year, essentially. It's been one cold after the next. So we do our best. We make it through and it's all good. But the thing is, I don't even mind it so much because I really love the scene of Superman walking the street, mostly because you get to see the citizens gather round and sort of take Superman in. And I feel like it's not that we never get that on the show, but we don't get that all the time. And so I really, really did like that moment of seeing the people interacting with him and watching him as he's using his vision and searching and breaking the hole and all of that. So it was a fair trade-off. But yeah, you just wonder why he couldn't have just said to Henderson, "Let's check for a trapdoor," or
Hey, look what I found over here.
Yeah, any
Look,
number of ways we could have gotten there.
there's a trap door here. There they are. But yeah, I get what you're saying because I mean it is neat to see him walking, but it did kind of make me laugh because he's just like strolling down the street.
Well, and it's also here's the other angle that we didn't talk about. As opposed to merely opening the trap door and turning off the water and retrieving these two people, instead he just punches a hole in the street.
He's got to keep people employed, so street workers need something to do. Construction. Obviously, he's not privy to Ohio's construction season, which is the summer, where every road in the world is tore up to be repaved. So he wanted to make sure those metropolis construction workers had a job. They needed to do something.
All right.
That's
he's looking out for the little guy. I like that.
Yeah. Keeping the economic roll,
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. I'll go with that. But meanwhile, Greer has reemerged in Lu Song's apartment and finds Lois there and leads her out at gunpoint, which will lead us to our big climax here. So as Lois and Greer are making their way down the street while Superman is preoccupied. Eventually, Superman does see them and runs off after them. And eventually, they all converge in this alley. Now, this might maybe this it might sound like a dumb question here, but it's not that this never dawned on me, but I guess this was a rare instance where it was really stark. Like this Superman doesn't have super speed.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had to look up right as we were talking here. Because I was thinking, it's like that's one thing about watching the show that I kind of have to go back. Like, when did he get what power? Because my like, if I was Superman, I would use heat vision so much for everything, And like my thought was, of course, this is like instant heat vision to the gun, done, But he didn't get his heat vision until 61. So you're right, super speed, because like the way he like moves and stuff, like it's like, oh, okay. It makes him a little bit more power to handle these type of situations, not having like as much speed and all this. But yeah, I like this scene because they're in the alley and like the crowd of people followed him, and there's Superman. And what made me laugh was, I don't have the exact dialogue, but Greer doesn't know who he is. Because when he leaves, she's like, that's Superman. And he's like, well, he didn't seem very super today. And I'm like, how do you not know who Superman is? Like, everybody read the paper back then. Like, that's what was life. Like, if you didn't read the paper, you didn't know anything. So when she's like, it would have been different if he was like, that's Superman, as if like he'd heard about it but didn't know about it, But just his whole reaction of not knowing Superman, I found very odd.
Interesting. Okay, so a couple of things. I agree with you. I think the better line would have been "That's Superman," not so super to me, right? I agree. I think that would have been better. We've been tracking this a little bit over the course of this first season because it really varies. And again, as we always acknowledge, these episodes were shot out of order, right? So it's not like we're
True.
seeing them in the order in which they were shot or that any continuity was necessarily intended. But there are instances in episodes where people don't know who he is. And I can sort of chalk that up to, okay, he's still relatively new on the scene. And yes, there are newspapers and radio, but it's not like it is now. However, clearly it seems like the people on the street who are watching him know who he is. Oh, that was my reading of it, but I don't know. Maybe they just didn't know what was going on and they were around it, but it felt like they knew who he was.
If I saw a guy just walk out to the street wearing that outfit and start punching the street and tearing it apart, I'd be losing my mind. The fact that they're just like cool with it gives me some indication that they have an idea who that is.
Yes.
Like, oh, that's just Superman doing this thing. He's just here to, do what he's got to do. No biggie. Move along. Let's go.
And I think even more importantly, Greer's this career criminal. You got to be up on current events, buddy.
Right. Exactly. Like, where you been, man?
Yeah. So that line that struck me as well. The thing about okay, so it was very contrived, right? That we switched to Superman when Clark could have easily pointed out Harry and Lily, but I can get past that. The execution of this climax here, there was something about it that felt so off to me, where Greer issues his demand, right? Of, I'll let her go and get back the statue if I'm set free. Henderson, of course, is quick to be like, no, like we don't make a deal. And Superman is like, wait, well, let us think about it. And the girl's like, you have 5 minutes. It reminded me of, I always bring it back to The Office, and there's this great bit. It's the tag, it's the cold open, and it's the tag of the episode. We get, different versions of it. But the tag of the episode is, Dwight trying to play a knock knock joke on Jim, and he pretends to be the KGB. And Jim has this whole bit where he's like, can you come back in 5 minutes? Like, I just got out of the shower. And he's like, no, KGB, like, you got to open up now. He's like, no, I'm late for work. Like, can you come back later? He's like, all right, well, what time's good for you? And then like going back and forth. And that's what it reminded me of here. But just this thing of like, we have to think about it. And then he runs away. And then he takes off and lands like, I don't know, 5 feet from where he had been standing. How would you have executed this? Even keeping in mind the limitations of the day. Yeah.
or as a writer, director, like maybe have him fly off and then land behind him or come up like a breakaway wall or something, come through the wall and pull him back or something, make it a little bit more thrilling, because it really just looks like he goes out, stock footage of flight, then drops right back in front. And you think about that from a production point, it'd be like, all right, George walks out of frame, turns around, jumps back into frame, and then of course they cut and add the stock flight. So yeah, it felt so like from the moment he takes off, the rest of this episode just feels kind of funky.
Yes.
From because like when he lands and he takes the gun and everything and punches him, and it's like great, like he gets a uppercut, like it's great Superman action, but yeah, it felt weird. Like we've seen other episodes and instances where like he's done, like I said, like come up behind him or something, or I don't know, like I said, drop down behind him even would have caught him off guard more than right back in front of him. So I don't know.
I think that what I would have see, here's the thing. Going back to what we were saying about inserting Superman just to have Superman, I think this ultimately would have worked better if Clark hadn't changed into Superman. If Clark had been the one to point out the location of Harry and Lily, and Clark had been the one to chase Lois and Greer into the alley, right? And then Greer issues his demand, and Clark's like, I'll run to tell Henderson or something like that. And
Yeah,
Clark runs
and
away, and then Superman lands or something like that. It was very awkward, and clunky is the perfect word. It was very awkward, very clunky, I feel, to have Superman run away and then fly and then land like so close to where he was. It just, I don't know. It was the climax was a little lacking there. After again, I think a very strong setup.
yeah, I like yours about like, but once again, like we would have what 2 seconds of Superman.
Yeah. No, I know.
So yeah, I just yeah, but
But yes, I agree with you. Great action and some great punches. I mean, it's really, Superman gets a few good hits in there. And after that, we have our wrap up there where we're back in the apartment. And I know you want to talk about this. I'll toss the ball to you. I mean, Henderson takes it upon himself. He says, I've never done this in 20 years on the force. I'm going to act as judge and jury, and I'm not going to arrest you, Harry. Decides to let him go, let him off the hook. What's your read on this?
oh, like so he's like talking to him, and Harry like has his guilty conscience because he straight up says like he says Henderson asks him something, and I'm drawing a blank. He says I feel he feels horrible about it. He doesn't want to say it. He's like, but I'll write it all out and I'll sign it. Complete confession. And I wondered if I had missed something, like a scene where Lusong says, I'm dropping the charges. Something where he's like, I'm not going to charge you. I'm not going to, come against you for what you've done. And then there'd been some sort of exchange. And then Henderson's like, well, I'm just going to have to let you go then. But we didn't get that. And like, I was listening, and so I kind of felt like, okay, Henderson's like letting him go, but like, is Lusong going to go out back and take out some like ancient, family punishment on him or something, like we're going to handle this internally type thing. Like, he gave him the look like, we got this, you betrayed the family. So I just, cause like you said, when you think about just the crime of stealing the statue, okay, like he's dropping the charges, gonna let him go. But then he blew up his business, his shop, his livelihood. That's a whole nother level of you messed up, man. But if there had been some sort of scene between Harry feeling ashamed and guilty and Lu Song just like looking at him and being like, I forgive you. I mean, that would have been like, wow. That would have been like some emotional impact. And I don't feel like it would be outside the level of this episode for that kind of moment. But this whole scene of, I'm not arresting you. And then he gets a kiss from Lily and then a kiss from Lois. And then Clark walks in and goes, what are you trying to be, Henderson? A Superman? And I was like, was there a scene that Superman got a double kit? Like, I was just like, this just felt weird.
They
That whole last scene just felt weird. Like they had filmed stuff that didn't make the episode or something, because it just felt awkward.
I feel like, and I've said this a lot, I don't mean to be a broken record. I feel like in the first season, I think they struggled a bit with the buttons at the end of the episodes. Some work better than others. Some are they just like they just kind of plop there. And I mean, this was a cute enough moment with the wink and everything. And look, George sells it as well as it can be sold. But yeah, I know it's not like it's not like we had seen Super. I guess the fact that he was being adored, right? But it's not like we even see Superman. I mean, it receive that sort of attention. But in any event, that piece of it, whatever. But I agree with you. Letting Harry go, it would have been nice. Like, clearly, Lily at least, and presumably Lusong too, are not upset at this turn of events, right? And are happy that Harry's being set free. But I think there needed to be a little, or look, I would have liked to have seen some more between them,
May I share something?
Sure.
I just got it. Like, my phone's blowing up. They just renewed Superman Lois for season 4.
Oh, hey.
Like, I'm sitting here and I'm looking like, why is my phone going off? Why am I getting all these messages and alerts right now? Like, why? I'm saying, like, I'm looking at, like, through Twitter, Messenger, and text messages. And I'm like, what? And then I just saw Superman and Lois renewed for season 4. It's like, I have to share with Anthony. Like, this is like, we're bonding here. Like, I have to tell him, like, here, live.
A 10 episode fourth season. So it'll be a shorter season, but hey, now
I'll
obviously
take
this will be old news by the time the audience hears this, but you can relive our excitement at this prospect. Well, I sure will keep talking more about this off mic, but in any event, we're essentially at the end of the episode here. But yeah, I think we're on the same page with this, where it just would have been kind of cool to get any bit. I guess the fact that Harry went to such lengths that he fought and he tried against Greer. I guess that's enough to win them back over. But here's the last thing I'll say, and I don't mean to beat up on this piece of the episode, but it's just like, if Greer had been the one to throw the bomb, I would have felt a lot like, that's the thing. They could have softened this very easily by showing Greer with the bomb and Harry being like, wait, what are you doing?
Harry goes to throw it, can't do it. Greer takes it, throws it. Boom, right there. You show Harry's hesitance, that he's having second thoughts, he can't really do it. Greer takes it, throws it. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Right? What you said, like, you show Harry as like he's doing bad, but Greer's doing evil. Like, and that's how you do it.
Yes. So I look, that it is what it is. But overall, I think this was a great episode. Before we give our Fedora rating, so let this marinate, how many out of 5 you would give this. One of our patrons, Eaton Ronker, he sent this into me probably when I started this podcast. I've been waiting to get to this episode, 20 episodes in, but he noticed the continuity blunder. And I'll be honest, I watched this twice, and both times I forgot to look for this, but I trust him that it's there. That it has to do with Henderson's tie. So it's the scene where Clark and Henderson are arguing in the apartment, and Henderson says he's going to look for Harry. So he says he turns to exit the room, and suddenly his tie is hanging outside of his jacket initially. Then he turns to exit the room, and suddenly his tie is tucked into his jacket. And he took screenshots from the Heroes and Icons channel of viewing.
Yes.
Which I don't have in front of me, but I think he had sent these in, or he had posted them on social media. He goes, they jump right from one shot to the other, so Inspector Henderson would have had to be as fast as Superman to tuck his tie in so quickly. Listen, these things happen. These kind of continuity errors happen now. Like,
yeah. Oh, so I've been watching stuff with Solomon, and we were watching the episode of The Flash. We've been rewatching season 1 together. And there's a scene where it's a medium shot and Joe's hands are here. The wide shot, his hands are behind his back. And I showed Solomon. So since then, that's been like a week ago, maybe 2. We're watching stuff and he'll be like, Dad, you catch that bad edit? Like, he's like looking for stuff now. And that was like my role. Like, I would always say that to Jania, like, you see that edit? See that? Now Solomon's on it. I'm like, dang, he's going to catch them before I do now.
It's not a continuity error per se, but there's a very funny bit in one of the season 10 episodes of Smallville, and I forget which episode it is, but Clark gets up. I think he's like sitting on a desk or something like that, but he gets up and he turns and he bumps into the desk on his way out. And they just left it. And I feel like that was one of those things like season 10. And they were like, hey, Tom, do you want to do that one again? And he's like, nope, I'm good.
No, no one cares. We're
one
wrapping
other
up.
one other instance that again is not really a continuity error, but it just made me think of this. I reference a lot the fact that I love the Honeymooners, talking about classic TV. And there's this famous moment, and I think this was from one of the Lost episodes, one of the skits from the Jackie Gleason show, not the classic
Okay.
39. I'm pretty sure. But in any event, there's a scene where Jackie Gleason realizes that his fly is open. And that's the beauty of this era of television. For me at least, it's like he just gets up and he turns around. You see him zip it up, and the scene just goes. So, in any event, thank you to Eaton for pointing that out. Again, I didn't notice it, so either I'm not that observant or I was just so engrossed in the episode.
Yeah. I mean, you do, because, and I mean, we know that the production of this is, they're filming multiple episodes at, the same time. Like, you might be on the set and you're reading lines for one episode, and then they say cut, and then you start reading lines for another episode. So it'd be very easy to be in the middle of something that maybe the scene that was before that or something, his tie was supposed to be like that, you know? Who knows? Or it could just be, like you said, just an error in editing where things are going on and it gets out of place and he didn't fix it. They left that take in there. They're like, they're like, no one's going to notice on their small TV. We can barely see these things as they are.
And now here we are in 2023 saying, hey, when's that 4K release of Adventures of Superman coming?
Where's that high def where I can actually see the sweat coming off George as he walks in his wool hat down the street in California?
I am watching these DVDs on my 4K player. I don't know that that's making any difference versus watching it on an upscaling Blu-ray player or a regular DVD player, but they look as good as I've ever seen them.
Well, what I found is, like, I have a 4K Blu-ray player, but it doesn't play DVDs. Like,
Oh, really?
it'll read them, but then it'll be like it. And I don't know if it's just a 4K DVD play or Blu-ray player issue, but it's like they're too low res that it doesn't, because like I found it out when I was watching a movie and it starts playing fine, then it starts like skipping and messing up. And I tried different DVDs, and I was doing some reading that someone, like, they just can't play it because they're so low quality.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm like, huh. So I have, the PlayStation in the living room for DVDs, and then now, like I said, I have the Xbox in the bedroom for DVDs because we either have streaming or the 4K player. So we still have a vast collection of DVDs.
Yeah, that's too bad. Yeah, this one so far, I've not had an issue with that, but I'll keep an eye out. All right. On a scale of 1 to 5 fedoras, how many would you give The Riddle of the Chinese Jade?
I give it a 3. Just because it's a refreshing approach. And like I said, if this was just like the first or only episode you watched, you'd probably rate it lower. But watching it straight, it's definitely a refreshing approach. I give it points for being culturally appropriate for the time. I give it points for just being a more Clark centric. And it's really good up until, like I said, that when he takes off, it kind of gets clunky. But it's just kind of refreshing from being cut away to the planet, to Jimmy, to, like, all these other things going on. And it's a fun episode of just the banter between Henderson and Clark.
I agree with all of that. I'm going to go 3.5. And honestly, part of me almost considered a 4. But I feel like I might have gotten a little swept up in our discussion. But I feel like 3.5 is kind of where I land on this. I, again, went into this not really thinking or not knowing how much we'd have to say about it. And then watching it and having this conversation, like, this was, again, I think a really, really solid episode for all the reasons that we talked about. And again, just was pleasantly surprised because this wasn't one of the ones that had really made a huge impression on me. So,
And I think
good
that's
outing.
what makes it unique is you could just watch this and not think about it. But then when you're watching it and you are thinking about it, you start to see some of the things that makes this episode really stand out. And I think the problem is you go into a Superman series thinking of Superman. Like, oh, well, Superman did this or Superman did that. And this episode doesn't do that with Superman. it's more about the other things around him that makes it special and different.
Yes. Yes. Right on. All right. KRYPTON Report. Where would you like to direct folks?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We, as of this recording, probably finished up our Flash Week retrospective. Or you can go back, because like Anthony said, we did a special video thing. My kids and I, this is our second year doing it, where we make all these like little segments and stuff for Superman Day, and then we release a video. It's like 50 some minutes of just like us doing little chats and reviews and stuff. And it started to become something we do every year to build up for Superman Day. It's just kind of fun to do. So check that out on YouTube, and always send us a message. Let us know what you think. And if you ever, like I've told people before, I'm always open to people who want to get into podcasting. If they want to guest and be on the show and just kind of feel it out, like I have no problem like letting people try. Like, so if you ever just want to get on the podcast and chat Superman something, shoot us a message.
That's very gracious. I make no such offer to people. No, I'm just kidding. In fact, no, listen.
Anthony's like, there's a process, an application, screenings, guys. Like, you don't understand the behind the scenes. He's already recorded up to 2025. He's on hold waiting for like anything for Superman Legacy to come out, for Digging for Kryptonite. Other than that, like, he's ready to go into 2025, ready to go. That's how ahead this man is.
I'm very ahead in the planning, not that far ahead in the recording, but I will say though, I had put the call out. So I'm a member of a number of Adventures of Superman fan groups on Facebook. And I put the call out a little while back because we're coming to the end of season 1. And I said to folks, if you would like to send in a clip, an audio clip or video clip talking about your favorite season 1 episode or moment or scene and why, I will include it in an upcoming episode. And those posts got a fair amount of likes and not a single submission. Not a single submission.
It's weird how that works sometimes. Like, I mean, all you have to do, like I tell my wife, like when she's thinking of stuff, you just go into your iPhone, press voice memo, record, and then you can send it directly to a Facebook chat, an email, and then you can, put a little noise filter on it, a little noise gate, clean it up a little bit, or whatever. And it's a nice little audio sample from people. And I'll do the same thing to some of my friends. Like, dude, just give me a quick feedback on your phone. And he's like, nah, man. I'm like, dude, just literally pull out your phone, talk into it for a minute and send it to me. So it is interesting. Like people I have conversations with on Twitter, I'm like, hey, you want to come on to the podcast? Nah, I'm good. Like, but you listen to the podcast and you're talking to me constantly. You don't want to actually like talk to me. He's like, nah. I'm like, all right, I respect that, but it's just funny.
Yeah, people, maybe it's just a matter of shyness. Well, in any event, as long as people are listening or watching and enjoying, I appreciate it. And maybe someone will take me up on that when I make another call like that at some point in the future. Because it's not an open invitation all the time, right? It's a specific moments.
Yeah, you got to be careful with Anthony. Like, you have to listen out. It's like you have to have your ear to the ground, and when the signal comes, you react, or you miss your opportunity.
No, but I thank you very much for coming on here, and I really do hope everyone will check out KRYPTON Report, and I hope they'll take you up on your offer if they're looking to do some podcasting themselves.
It'd be fun.
All right, so thank you, Tyler. Thank you, audience. As always, I do appreciate you tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We will be back in 2 weeks with our next all-new episode. Adventures await. This show is part of the Flat Squirrel Podcast Network, home to Digging for Kryptonite, another exciting episode in the adventures of Superman, Summoning the Zords, and My Comic Shop History, available wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review today. Sign up at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato for additional content. Thank you all.